prasadam. The deities are beautiful. The temple is amazing. I would invite everybody to go to Prabhupada Village if you've never been there. So, as usual, tonight we're going to start out with pranams. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Paricharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Yadesha Tarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. So hopefully everybody is with us. I see Jai Krishna's here all the way from Dominican Republic. And we have Bharat, who's brand new with us. So we're very happy to have him tonight. Everybody be ready to read. We're reading from the 5th and 6th chapters of the 7th canto. And this particular chapter is entitled Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. And with your permission, I will begin the reading, and then whoever would like to join next, please do. Text 1. The great saint Narada Muni said, the demons headed by Hiranyakashipu accepted Sukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. Sukracharya's two sons, Sunda and Amarka, lived near Hiranyakashipu's palace. Prahlad Maharaj was already educated in devotional life, but when his father sent him to the two sons of Sukracharya to be educated, they accepted him at their school along with the other sons of the Asuras. Prahlad certainly heard and recited the topics of politics and economics taught by the teachers, but he understood that the political philosophy involves considering someone a friend and someone else an enemy, and thus he did not like it. My dear King Yudhisthira, once upon a time, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, took his son Prahlad on his lap and very affectionately inquired, my dear son, please let me know what you think is the best of all the subjects you have studied from your teachers. Prahlad Maharaj replied, O best of the Asuras, king of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because have fallen into a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. One should give up this position and go to the forest, Vana. More clearly, one should go to Vrindavan, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent, and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narada Muni continued, when Prahlad Maharaj spoke about the path of self-realization and devotional service, thus being faithful to the camp of his father's enemies, Hiranyakashipu, the king of the demons, heard Prahlad's words, and he laughingly said, thus is the intelligence of children spoiled by the words of the enemy. Hiranyakashipu advised his assistants, my dear demons, give complete protection to this boy at the Gurukula where he is instructed, so that his intelligence will not be further influenced by Vaishnavas who may go there in disguise. When Hiranyakashipu's servants brought the boy Prahlad back to the Gurukula, the place where the Brahmanas taught the boys, the priest of the demons, Sunda and Amarka, pacified him. With very mild voices and affectionate words, they inquired from him as follows. Dear son Prahlad, all peace and good fortune unto you. Kindly do not speak lies. Just reply with the truth. These boys you see are not like you, for they do not speak in a deviant way. How have you learned these instructions? How has your intelligence been spoiled in this way? O best of your family, has this pollution of your intelligence been brought about by you or by the enemies? We are all your teachers and are all very eager to hear about this. Please tell us the truth. Prahlad Maharaj replied, Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose external energy has created the distinctions of, quote, my friend, unquote, and, quote, my enemy, unquote, by deluding the intelligence of men. Indeed, I am now actually experiencing this, although I have previously heard of it from authoritative sources. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with the living entity because of his devotional service, one becomes a pundit and does not make distinctions between enemies, friends, and himself. Intelligently, he then thinks, every one of us is an eternal servant of God, and therefore we are not different from one another. Persons who always think in terms of enemy and friend are unable to ascertain the supersoul within themselves. Not to speak of then, even such exalted persons as Lord Brahma, who are fully conversant with the Vedic literature, are sometimes bewildered in following the principles of devotional service. The same Supreme Personality of Godhead who has created this situation has certainly given me the intelligence to take the side of your so-called enemy. Boy, that's some good stuff. All right, somebody want to pick it up at text 14?
I always volunteer first, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Hey, you give me 5 seconds to say something. I was in Cartagena, Colombia over the weekend,
Uh-huh.
and I always try to visit a temple anywhere I go, of course, if there's a temple. And it's just so empowering to see that Prabhupada is all over the world. I mean, you walk into even just a little preaching center, and there's a Murti of Prabhupada. It just shows you how potent Prabhupada still is. It was just amazing. I had to share that.
Jaya
Okay.
Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada. Okay. Old Brahmins, teachers. As iron attracted by a magnetic stone moves automatically towards the magnet, my consciousness, having been changed by his will, is attracted by Lord Vishnu. Here is a disc in his hand, thus I have no independence. The great saint Narada Muni continued. The great soul Prahlad Maharaj became silent after saying this to his teachers, Sanda and Amarka, the seminal sons of Sukaracharya. These so-called Brahmins then became angry at him because they were servants of Hiranyakashipu. They were very, very sorry. And to chastise Prahlad Maharaj, they spoke as follows. Oh, please bring me a stick. This Prahlad is damaging our name and fame. Because of his bad intelligence, he has become like a cinder in the dynasty of the demons. Now he needs to be treated by the fourth and the four kinds of political diplomacy. This rascal Prahlad has appeared like a thorn tree in the forest of sandalwood. They cut down sandalwood trees, an axe is needed, and the wood of the thorn tree is very suitable for the handle of such an axe. Lord Vishnu was the axe for cutting down the sandalwood forest of the family of demons. And thus, and this Prahlad is the handle of that axe. Sanda and Amarka, the teachers of Prahlad Maharaj, chastised and threatened their disciple in various ways and began teaching him about the paths of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. This is the way they educated him. Oops. After some time, the teachers Sanda and Amarka thought that Prahlad Maharaj was sufficiently educated in diplomatic affairs of pacifying public leaders. These of them had given them lucrative posts, dividing and ruling over them, and punished them in cases of disobedience. Then one day, after Prahlad's mother had personally washed the boy and dressed him nicely, sufficient ornaments, he presented him before his father. When Hiranyakashipu saw that his child had fallen at his feet, was offering obeisances, as an affectionate father, he immediately began showering blessings upon the child and embracing him with both arms. A father naturally feels happy to embrace his son, and Hiranyakashipu became very happy in this way. That was 10. Should I stop? There's a lot
Uh,
of people.
well, yeah, wherever you want to stop is fine. I'd say 10 to
Yeah.
15 are fine. We
Okay, I've
got,
stopped.
okay. Anybody else that wants to read? Nrsimhadeva, you want to read? I see your hand is up.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hi, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Please read.
Um,
Thank you, by the way. We appreciate that, Jai Krishna Prabhu. Very nice.
Text 10, right, Prabhuji?
Yes, please. Text, which text is it? 21?
21.
Yeah, 21.
Narada Muni continued, My dear King Yudhishthir, Hiranyakashipu seated Prahlad Maharaj on his lap and began smiling his head. With affectionate tears gliding down from his eyes and motioning the child's smiling face, he spoke to his son as follows. Hiranyakashipu said, My dear Prahlad, my dear son, O long-lived one, for so much time you have heard many things from your teachers. Now please repeat to me whatever you think is the best of that knowledge. Prahlad Maharaj said, Hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord as one's best friend, and surrendering everything onto him. In other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. One second. After hearing these words of devotional service from the mouth of his son Prahlad, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry. His lips trembling, he spoke as follows to Sanda, the son of his Guru Sukracharya. Prabhuji Spurti read. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you.
O unqualified, most heinous son of Brahmana, you have disobeyed my order and taken shelter of the party of my enemies. You have taught this poor boy about devotional service. What is this nonsense? In due course of time, various types of diseases are manifest in those who are sinful. Similarly, in this world, there are many deceptive friends in false garbs, but eventually, because of their false behavior, their actually enmity becomes manifest. The son of Sukracharya, Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, said, O enemy of King Indra, O king, whatever your son Prahlad has said was not taught to him by me or anyone else. His spontaneous devotional service has naturally developed in him. Therefore, please give up your anger and do not unnecessarily accuse us. It is not good to insult a Brahmana in this way. Sri Narada Muni continued, when Hiranyakashipu received this reply from the teacher, he again addressed his son Prahlad. Hiranyakashipu said, You rascal, most fallen of our family, you have not received this education from your teachers. Where have you gotten it? Prahlad Maharaj replied, Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress toward hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both. Hare
Krishna Prabhu. Nrsimhadeva. Persons who strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to the external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind man guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into the ditch. Materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. Unless the smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way can one be freed from material contamination. After Prahlad Maharaj had spoken in this way and become silent, Hiranyakashipu, blinded by anger, threw him off his lap and onto the ground. Indignant and angry, and his reddish eyes like molten copper. Hiranyakashipu said to his servants, "O demons, take this body away from me. He deserves to be killed. Kill him as soon as possible. This boy, Prahlad, is the killer of my brother, for he has given up his family to engage in the devotional service of the enemy. Lord Vishnu, like menial servant." Hare Krishna. Someone can do.
Very good. Thank you. That was good. Who else would like to read?
I can read it.
Thank you.
All right. So verse 36. Although Prahlad is only 5 years old, even at this young age, he has given up his affectionate relationship with his father and mother. Therefore, he is certainly untrustworthy. Indeed, it is not at all believable that he will behave well toward Vishnu. Although a medicinal herb being born in the forest does not belong to the same category as a man, if beneficial, it is kept very carefully. Similarly, if someone outside one's family is favorable, he should be given protection like a son. On the other hand, if a limb of one's body is poisoned by disease, it must be amputated so that the rest of the body may live happily. Similarly, even one's own son, if unfavorable, must be rejected, although born of one's own body. Just as uncontrolled senses are the enemies of all yogis engaged in advancing in spiritual life, this Prahlad, who appears to be a friend, is an enemy because I cannot control him. Therefore, this enemy, whether eating, sitting, or sleeping, must be killed by all means. The demons, Rakshasas, the servants of Hiranyakashipu, thus began striking the tender parts of Prahlad Maharaj's body with their tridents. The demons all had fearful faces, sharp teeth, and reddish, coppery beards and hair, and they appeared extremely threatening. Making a tumultuous sound, shouting, "Chop him up, pierce him," they began striking Prahlad Maharaj, who sat silently, meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though a person who has no assets in pious activities performs some good deed, it will have no result. Thus, the weapons of the demons had no tangible effects upon Prahlad Maharaj because he was a devotee undisturbed by material conditions and fully engaged in meditating upon and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable, who cannot be realized by the material senses, and who is the soul of the entire universe. My dear King Yudhishthir, when all the attempts of the demons to kill Prahlad Maharaj were futile, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, being most fearful, began contriving other means to kill him. Hiranyakashipu could not kill his son by throwing him beneath the feet of big elephants, throwing him among huge, fearful snakes, employing destructive spells, hurling him from the top of a hill, conjuring up illusory tricks, administering poison, starving him, exposing him to severe cold, winds, fire, and water, or throwing heavy stones to crush him. When Hiranyakashipu found that he could not in any way harm Prahlad, who was completely sinless, he was in great anxiety about what to do next. Hiranyakashipu thought, "I have used many ill names in chastising this boy Prahlad, and have devised many means of killing him. But despite all my endeavors, he could not be killed. Indeed, he saved himself by his own powers, without being affected in the least by these treacheries and abominable actions." Although he is very near to me and is merely a child, he is situated in complete fearlessness. He resembles a dog's curved tail, which can never be straightened, because he never forgets my misbehavior and his connection with his master, Lord Vishnu. I can see that this boy's strength is unlimited, for he has not feared any of my punishments. He appears immortal. Therefore, because of my enmity toward him, I shall die. Or maybe this will not take place. Thinking in this way, the king of the Daityas, morose and bereft of bodily luster, remained silent with his face downward. Then Shanda and Amarka, the two sons of Shukracharya, spoke to him in secret. Somebody else can read now?
Yep. Anyone else? Rangavati, you haven't read?
Yep, I can read for a while.
Okay.
Thinking in this, text 49. O Lord, we know that when you simply move your eyebrows, all the commanders of the various planets are most afraid. Without the help of any assistant, you have conquered all the three worlds. Therefore, we do not find any reason for you to be morose and full of anxiety. As for Prahlad, he is nothing but a child and cannot be a cause of anxiety. After all, his bad or good qualities have no value. Until the return of our spiritual master, Sukracharya, arrest this child with the ropes of Varuna, so that he will not flee in fear. In any case, by the time he is somewhat grown up and has assimilated our instructions or served our spiritual master, he will change in his intelligence. Thus, there need be no cause for anxiety. After hearing these instructions, Shanda and Amarka, the sons of his spiritual master, Hiranyakashipu, agreed and requested them to instruct Prahlad in that system of occupational duty which is followed by royal householder families. Thereafter, Shanda and Amarka systematically and unceasingly taught Prahlad Maharaj, who was very submissive and humble, about mundane religion, economic development, and sense gratification. The teachers, Shanda and Amarka, instructed Prahlad Maharaj in the three kinds of material advancement called religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Prahlad, however, being situated above such instructions, did not like them, for such instructions are based on the duality of worldly affairs, which involve one of the materialistic ways of life marked by birth, death, old age, and disease. When the teachers went home to attend to their household affairs, the students of the same age as Prahlad Maharaj would call him to take the opportunity of leisure hours for play. Prahlad Maharaj, who was truly the supreme learned person, then addressed his class friends in a very sweet language. Smiling, he began to teach them about the uselessness of the materialistic way of life. Being very kind to them, he instructed them as follows. My dear King Yudhishthir, all the children were very much affectionate and respectful to Prahlad Maharaj, and because of their tender age, they were not so polluted by the instructions and actions of their teachers, who were attached to condemned duality and bodily comfort. Thus the boys surrounded Prahlad Maharaj, giving up their playthings, and sat down to hear him. Their hearts and eyes being fixed upon him, they looked at him with great earnestness. Prahlad Maharaj, although born in a demon family, was an exalted devotee, and he desired their welfare. Thus he began instructing them about the futility of materialistic life.
That's beautiful.
Does someone else want to take up the next chapter?
Yep. Chapter 6, Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Who would like to start off on that chapter? How many, let's see how many verses we have here. So This one only has 29 verses, 30 verses, so it's pretty short, actually. Is there anybody who would like to start off? Or I will, it's up to you. Okay, I'll
Happy
read.
to jump in.
Go ahead, go right ahead. Start with text.
I'll take 5 or so.
Okay.
Prahlad Maharaj said, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form or body from the very beginning of life. In other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life, one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. The human form of life affords one a chance to return home, back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. This devotional service is natural because of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most loved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all living beings. Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear friends, born of demonic families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life, according to one's past fruitive activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor. This is reobtained distress. Endeavors merely for sense gratification and material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in loss of time and energy with no actual profit. One's endeavors are directed towards Krishna consciousness. One can surely attain the spiritual platform, self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development. Therefore, while in material existence, Bhava Masrita, a person's full competent to distinguish wrong from right must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life as long as the body is stout and strong, is not embarrassed by dwindling. That's where I am. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years, but for one who cannot control his senses, half of those years are completely lost because at night he sleeps 12 hours, being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. Well, I'm doomed. One more. In this tender age of childhood, when everyone is bewildered, one passes 10 years. Similarly, in boyhood, engaged in sporting and playing, one passes another 10 years. In this way, 20 years are wasted. Similarly, in old age, when one is an invalid, unable to perform even material activities, one passes another 20 years wasted.
Very good. Thank you. Someone else would like to pick up at text 8?
Can I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Text 8. One whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. In such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted because even during those years, he cannot engage himself in devotional service. What person too attached to household life due to being unable to control his senses can liberate himself. An attached householder is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family, wife, children, and other relatives. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in the household life? Thieves, professional servants, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their very dear lives. Here's the next one.
Next one is 11, 13.
11 and 13. Where's the translation? Oh, here. How can a person who is most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? Especially a wife is always very kind and sympathetic and always pleases her husband in a solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear, and their all affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who would give up that association? Aside from this, in household affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture, and there are also animals and servants. Who could give us such a comfort? The attached householder is like a silkworm which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by material conditions. How can one escape? One who is too attached cannot understand that he is wasting his valuable time for the maintenance of his family. He also fails to understand that the purpose of human life, a life suitable for realization of the absolute truth, is being imperceptibly spoiled. However, he is very cleverly attentive to seeing that not a single farthing is lost by mismanagement. Thus, although an attached person is in material existence always suffers from threefold misery, he does not develop distaste for the way of material existence. If a person too attached to the duties of family maintenance is unable to control his senses, the core of his heart is immersed in how to accumulate money. Although he knows that one who takes the wealth of others will be punished by the law of government and by the laws of Yamaraj after death, he continues cheating others to acquire money. Oh, my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of family life. Just like uneducated cats and dogs, they are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. Tell me when it is complete. when I can stop. Okay.
Okay.
My dear friends, O sons of the demons, it is certain that no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of God has been able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. Rather, those bereft of knowledge of the Lord are bound by the material laws. They are factually addicted to sense gratification, and their target is woman. Indeed, they are actually playthings in the hands of attractive women. Victimized by such a conception of life, they become surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and thus they are shackled to material bondage. Those who are very much addicted to this conception of life are called demons. Therefore, although you are sons of demons, keep aloof from such persons and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, the origin of all the demigods. Because the ultimate goal for the devotees of Narayana is liberation from the bondage of material existence.
Okay. Thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. Anybody else would like to read a little bit? Anybody hasn't read yet who wants to read?
Bhavananda would like to read.
Okay. Take it at text 19, Bob.
Just before he does, I'd like to welcome some new people tonight. Bhaveen, Doug, and AJ. So welcome everyone to our reading.
So glad to have you.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Text 19. My dear sons of demons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, is the original Supersoul, the father of all living entities. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing him or worshiping him under any conditions, whether one be a child or an old man. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a fact, and therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, who is infallible and indefatigable,
Indefatigable.
indefatigable.
Never
Yeah.
heard of it.
Unable to be
different
fatigued.
forms of life from the inert living beings Savara, such as the plants, to Brahmana, the foremost created living being. He is also present in the varieties of material creations and in the material elements, the total material energy and the modes of material nature.
Sattva-guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna.
Pavaguna, as well as the unmanifested material nature and the false ego. Although he is one, he is present everywhere, and he is also the transcendental supersoul, the cause of all causes, who is present as the observer in the core of the hearts of all living entities. He is indicated as that which is pervaded and is the all-pervading supersoul, but actually he cannot be indicated. He is changeless and undivided. He is simply perceived as the supreme Sid Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, being covered by the curtain of the material energy. To the atheist, he appears non-existent. Therefore, my dear young friends, born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demonistic nature, and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all entities, living entities, and by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. Nothing is unattainable for devotees who have satisfied the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, who is the cause of all causes, the original source of everything. The Lord is the reservoir of unlimited spiritual qualities. For devotees, therefore, who are transcendental to the modes of material nature, what is the use of following the principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are all automatically unobtainable under the influence of the modes of nature? We devotees always glorify the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore we need not ask for anything in terms of dharma, karma, artha, or and moksha. religion, economic development, and sense gratification. These are described in the Vedas as Trivarga, or three ways to salvation. Within these three categories are education and self-realization, ritualistic ceremonies performed according to the Vedic injunctions, logic, the science of law and order, and the various means of earning one's livelihood. These are the external subject matters of the study of the Vedas, and therefore I consider them material. However, I consider surrender to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu to be transcendental. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the well-wisher and friends of all living entities, formally explained this transcendental knowledge to the great saint Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada. But everyone who has taken shelter of Narada's disciplic succession can understand this confidential knowledge. Prahlad Maharaj continued, I received this knowledge from the great saint Narada Muni, who is always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called Bhagavata Dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and is free from all material contamination. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlad, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master other than Sanda and Amkara, the sons of Sukacharya. After all, we are children, and they are our controllers. For you especially, who always remains within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it is possible for you to hear Narada kindly dispel our doubts in this regard?
Okay, well, very, very good. That's 2 chapters. Put 2 chapters under our belt tonight, guys. Congratulations. That's wonderful. We're getting to the next chapter. We're not going to answer this question, by the way. We're going to make you wait till next week, come back and read with us, because he wants to know how he could hear from Narada, right? So that'll be discussed in the next chapter. But in this 2 chapters, has anybody got any points that you would like to go over or illuminate us on, or any questions or anything you would like to add to this overall conversation? Please do this time.
It's funny, today I was in contact with one devotee lady who was worried about her teenage sons because they're not interested in devotional service at all. So I was giving her some advice. But I was thinking this is just opposite. Hiranyakashipu is worried about his son because he does want to be Krishna conscious. And we're worried about our children because they don't want to be Krishna conscious. So we're totally the opposite. And I was thinking these young children here of Nrsimhadeva, people like Prahlad Maharaj probably are their heroes. Is their hero, someone they can identify with, and another child who is so Krishna conscious is like a hero for children who are, Krishna conscious. That's what I was just thinking.
That's a really cool thought. Well, let me just say one thing in that regard. So when the teachers when Shanda and Amarka brought Prahlad Maharaj to Hiranyakashipu, wanted to know what was the best thing he had learned, right? So he continually goes into this pure devotional rapport, and he can't believe it. He can't understand how this pollution has come over his son. He thinks that he's been infected by the enemy in some way and trained in some way against the Lord. As a matter of fact, he was very angry with him because his brother, Hiranyaksha, was killed by Prahlad's master, Lord and Master, Narayan, Vishnu, like that. So, in the form of Raha. So, he is not very happy with his son. At first, he laughs it off. He thinks, well, this is just the mind of a small child. It's okay. Take him back. How many times did he go back? Would he go back 3 times, 4 times? Before he finally said, kill him, kill him ASAP. He wanted him dead immediately because he felt like he was the killer of his own brother. So, very good point. These demons want you to be educated in the ways of demoniac life. And in this case, specifically, he was talking about dharma, artha, kama, moksha, like that. He regards those things as materialistic because even though they're in the Vedas for gradual elevation, they really only produce material results. Until a person comes to Bhagavad Dharma, it's all material. You may go to the higher planetary systems, you may go to the lower. Brahma bhuvanal loka, right? That's what it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that even if you go to the highest planet, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. So Prahlad Maharaj is recommending a transcendental activity called Bhagavad Dharma. And he goes through that at some great length in just a few moments. But a very good point, no doubt. I mean, the demons are trying to educate their children and educate them in the ways of materialistic life, how to eat better, how to sleep better, how to have better sex life, and how to defend themselves better. If you could only have a bigger atomic bomb, then you would be supreme also. So this is their idea. They want to teach us how to live in a material world, where in the Bhakti Vinod prayer, it says the Vaishnava dies to live and living tries to spread the holy names around. He's not concerned about this material world. He is actually dead to the material world. He becomes dead and indifferent to the material world. He's no longer attached to these things in the material world that bring us happiness and distress on a regular basis. At this point, he's attracted to only those things which are attached to the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And in this case, Nrsimhadeva. So very, very cool. Any other point you want to make in that regard? Anybody else got something to say about that? Please chime in if you've got a question or.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something. The third time that Prahlad Maharaj was brought before Hiranyakashipu, he gave that reply that hearing and chanting about the holy name of Krishna is the most important thing. Srila Prabhupada gives a wonderful, wonderful long purport. That's text 24. And as we all know, Prabhupada's purports are packed with transcendental knowledge and realization. But text 24 in chapter 5, 23 and 24, the purport is 15 pages long.
That's why you couldn't get to the next verse.
There's some verses that are long purports, like Srimad Bhagavatam 1, the first canto, first chapter, first verse has a long purport, but this is even longer. And Srila Prabhupada talks about the rasas, he talks about the 9 processes of devotional service in detail. He includes offenses to be avoided, and he also includes how important deity worship is for householders. So I would urge everybody to especially read that purport. It's wonderful. And then another one was in chapter 7 or chapter 6, the first verse. Srila Prabhupada quotes that verse quite often. Kaumara acharit pragya, how important it is to take a spiritual life from the very beginning of life. Prahlad Maharaj recommends that one must take up the spiritual life from the very beginning at the age of 5. And that's a very important verse also.
Very nice. You know, this thing is actually replete with some of the great sayings that Prabhupada made famous, like chewing the chewed and money sweeter than honey. I mean, these are the ones you heard Prabhupada say again and again. And we walked around, we used to use those all the time. And they're very, very effective points. And they're from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago out of the mouth of a young child. Prahlad Maharaj is the most wise of all. course, he knew he'd been hearing all of this from Narada Muni, so therefore he was well versed, you know. But very, very good points. Actually, those are excellent points because those verses, text 23 and 24, where there's 15 pages of purports, that is one of the most important verses actually in the whole thing. And Prabhupada uses this all the time because it's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smadanam. You know, it's Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. These are the 9 devotional processes that we are concerned with. Prabhupada says that any one of those processes can deliver one back to the spiritual sky. But what if you did them all 9? What merit would you have when you enter into the spiritual sky on your celestial chariot, being taken as flowers are being showered on you by the demigods and you're headed back home, taking 100 generations in each direction? How does that feel? That's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam on numerous occasions, actually, by people who've gone back home, back to Godhead. So that's a very wonderful verse because that really tells us everything that we need to know. But Prabhupada also says in another place, this is in the, I think the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sevan Mukhi Hi Jivadao. It means that this tongue itself, just the tongue, can deliver a person back home, back to Godhead. How's that possible? Just the tongue. That's the only thing you need. You got all these senses, and you got the mind and all this other. You don't even need it. Just the tongue. And by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by chanting His holy names, right? And by testing only Krishna Prasad, Prabhupada says the tongue will deliver one back home, back to the spiritual sky. Very good point. I was going to go over that in a minute. I'm glad you got to it. So that was very, very good. Is there any other points anybody wants to make? And we'll just kind of recap this quickly, and then anybody has any questions or you want to chime in, please do. Now, do we have Ajay Natai here with us tonight? Is he also here? He didn't get to read. He's a new addition to our community.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Prabhupada.
Haribo. Yeah, good to see you. Glad you're here. I want you to get to know all these great stalwart devotees on this call. They're such nice
Hare
devotees.
Krishna, everyone.
Yeah, very nice that you're with us, and a great addition to our community. He's already got us booked in to do Bhagavatam classes and kirtans for Jagannath Temple, just south of here in Huntsville, Alabama. So good work, good service. And we look forward to a lot of that. Do you have any comment, Ajay, that you want to add?
No, I'm just absorbing all of it. It's so amazing, especially what Rama Raghava mentioned, that verse is just so amazing what Srila Prabhupada has given to us. I see, I've been, when I go to the church, you go to the mosque, no one can say, I will take you back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada is so confident, he says that. And that's the mercy of a spiritual master, when we get all these mercy. And that's all I will say, Prabhu. And you can see Prahlad Maharaj, so confident, just chanting the name of the Lord and even preaching to his father. This is the only thing, and the power of the holy name. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Thank you, Ajay Natai. We're happy to hear your commentary always. And please chime in if you have any other questions or points you'd like to make. So if we go back over the 5th chapter, rather, it starts out, with Sankaracharya being the spiritual master and his 2 sons, Shanda and Amarka. And they're teaching a political philosophy to this young Prahlad. And he just didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. Does anybody know why he didn't like it? Why didn't he like it? I mean, he's a natural son of a king. Well, shouldn't he learn all the ways of the kingly, duties and so forth? He didn't like it. Why not?
Because he had already been enlightened. And I guess we don't want to give the spoiler for the next chapter, but he'd already heard transcendental knowledge from Narada Muni before.
That's correct.
But I won't say how he heard it.
Don't say how, because we want to give away the cat out of the bag, so to speak. Next week is going to be really good. But he didn't like it particularly because it created enemies and friends. It created duplicity, really. It created dualistic concept because now this person is my friend and person is my enemy. And I want to share with you just quickly a few things that Prabhupada had to say to us about politics. And I think this is important. Here you can see that Prahlad Maharaj has rejected this materialistic friend and enemy concept. And Prabhupada said that, originally he was interested in Gandhi's movement because it was nonviolent. He felt like India needed its independence for it to be really a voice in the world, to be heard and, legitimately heard. And the first moment he met his spiritual master, before he sat down, his spiritual master told him, he said, go to the Western world and preach this information that, you're getting. Your young boys, your intelligent boys, go. But Prabhupada's reply was that how can we do that? We don't have any respect in the world. We're not even governed by ourselves. The British are there like that. Bhaktisiddhanta told him there is absolutely no impediment for preaching the holy name. There's no restriction for preaching the holy name. You can do it anywhere, anytime, to anybody. So it's not dependent on these political things. So when we look at I and mine, and we look at you are my enemy, you are my friend, what we've done is we've created an illusion. We've created a situation that is not really real. And Prahlad Maharaj rejected it. Prabhupada said after that he never voted again. Prabhupada never voted. Never voted. He'd want to take one side or the other side. One thing that Prabhupada said, is a quote from Srila Prabhupada, politics is very much like stool. At some points, it's on the left side of the colon, and the next time it's on the right-hand side of the colon. But it's always stool. And it's always materialistic. And now we've got a big election coming up right away. Okay, so this might be a little pertinent for us to at least hear this, how Prabhupada viewed materialistic politics. So just take that in mind, as we're going forward. But Prahlad Maharaj rejected it. He did not like it. He didn't want to hear any more about it. So when he asked him what's the best that he learned, he explained to him, this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, he laughed at him the first time because he said intelligence, spoiled intelligence of a child by the enemy. Obviously, Vaishnavas must be here in disguise, protect him from this pollution. Okay, so the next time he comes back, he's been instructed. They've done a good job. These Sandana Marga are really giving it all they got. they're giving it all they got because their life's on the line, right? I mean, you do not want to displease a Hiranyakashipu. I promise that would be a bad idea. So when they come back, the next thing he comes back, he's prepared. And he offers his obeisances. He's nicely prepared by his mother. He comes back. He offers his obeisances in front of his father. What does his father do? He immediately reaches for young Prahlad, puts him on his lap, starts smelling his head, embracing the boy. Tears are coming out of his eyes. He's attached to his son. Naturally, fathers are attached to their sons. And they're very much very happy to see their sons when they come, especially if they're humble like that. He's offered his obeisances and so forth. So he asked him again. He said, now, please tell me again what it is. So Prahlad Maharaj offered his respectful obeisances into the Supreme Personality of Godhead in front of the demon Hiranyakashipu. And he did it in the most beautiful way. And then he said that he had heard about this concept of friend and enemy from Narada. But he said, now I'm actually experiencing it. He said, now I'm actually experiencing this concept of friend and enemy because I see it within my own father. You see what I'm saying? Because he's now, I've taken the position of the enemy, apparently, to my father. So he said, you shouldn't make these distinctions. Eternally, we're really not different than each other. I wrote a song recently for some of these yoga studio things that we do. And, because everybody is looking, in the Bhagavatam, it says, everyone is looking for a position of oneness. We want one religion. We want one God. We want one humanity. We want one kind of existence under God. Everybody really wants that. And there's so many vendors out there. If you look on the internet, it's become horrendous. I mean, literally, the Facebook, every time something comes up, it's some bogus guru giving you some partial truth, some speculative knowledge, expecting you to follow them, get millions of hits and monetize that and get money. And oh, come on. I mean, the whole thing is polluted in the worst possible way. So if that's the case, we need a unity. So I wrote a song that says, don't you know we all belong to each other? Do you not know that? Brothers and sisters, everyone, right? No matter what your creed or color, we all have a place beneath the sun. And when we're singing all together and our voices become one, you can literally feel the love pouring down upon us. It's raining mercy from above. So the idea is that when we chant together, when we sing together, when we dance together, when we follow this Sankirtan movement together, then what we find is that we become very happy and we feel the sense of unity. And so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks about the literary incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva, but it also talks about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his appearance in the Bhagavatam too. Let's see where that verse is. I had that verse up for you earlier. Well, we know that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam where it talks about people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will chant the holy names of the Lord in this age of Kali. So that's the idea. People, there it is. It's Krishna Varnam Tvisak Krishnam Sango Pangastra Prasadam. Right? All right. So that one. Yagyai Sankirtano Prayar Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of the Sankirtan Yagya, and that's in 11.5.29. That's one that you should go back over a couple of times because it mentions Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his appearance in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So anyway, it says that Prahlad goes on to tell Hiranyakashipu that a person's consciousness should be attached to Lord Vishnu, and his teachers say that his naturally attached to Lord Vishnu, and he has no independence. He says, I have no independence from Lord Vishnu. Well, that's the point when he said, I have no independence from Lord Vishnu. That's the point where he said, bring me a stick. Bring me a stick. That's pretty intense. He said he needs the fourth kind of disciplinary measure, which is actual martial punishment. So bring me a stick. He's a cinder in our family, and he's degraded our family name by taking the side of the enemy. And he is the very handle for the axe to cut down the forest of our demoniac family. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was then immediately chastised, and he was sent back again. This time they got very seriously about teaching him the science of sense gratification that we talked about earlier. But Prahlad, he was not interested at all. As a matter of fact, he began to preach directly to his schoolmates. And them being innocent, they were very much interested in hearing what he had to say. And his teachers actually said, don't blame us. We've done everything we can do, because Hiranyakashipu had blamed his teachers. He said, please don't blame us. He's naturally developed these devotional attitudes. So, in this life, people who've had previous experience, in previous lifetimes in devotional service and have made some progress, they're naturally attracted in this life. They wake up. We see them waking up. Krishna says, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the greatest type of danger, which is to fall back down in the modes, specifically the mode of ignorance, into the animal species. So we have to be very, very cautious and careful about that. So to keep that from happening, Prahlad has recommended these 9 processes that we just talked about a moment ago that Rama Raghava brought to our attention. So they didn't want him to blame the teachers. And he didn't want to blame the teachers, so he sent him back again. And when Prahlad started talking to him, he was telling them about these things that Prabhupada uses, like this chewing of the chewed, right? Those people who are interested in chewing repeatedly that which has already been chewed, which is tasteless, Prabhupada called it stale, pale, and hackneyed. Hackneyed. I mean, how often do you hear that word? Really, you don't hear that. Prabhupada's amazing, the selection of vocabulary that he used to teach us. Hackneyed. I mean, look it up. It's something that has no taste. It's completely useless. It's devoid of any flavor. There's no rasa in it. There's no ruchi in it. There's nothing there. So pale, stale, dead, and hackneyed. That is the material world, which he referred to as being static. He used the word static. But then when he spoke about transcendence, he always uses the word dynamic, right? So static and dynamic, there's a big difference here. Prabhupada was able to enlighten us by using these terminologies. So Prahlad Maharaj said, chewing the chewed, anyone who's engaged in that effort is marked for repeated death. Repeated birth, death, old age, and disease in the material world. So if you want to stay here and you want to chew the chewed, you got a choice. You can stay here forever. There are literally unlimited desires. Unlimited. So you can stay here and forever, literally. Time is eternal. Karma's not, but time is. You can stay here forever. And you could pursue these ideas that you think are the most important thing. But when Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad, what's the most important thing you've learned? What is that most important thing? He said the goal of life is to engage in the service of Vishnu and to go back home, back to Godhead. That's what Prahlad Maharaj said. He says that Bhagavad Dharma is the purpose of life. But those who are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, they have to suffer the threefold miseries within the 3 modes of material nature. Right? So that if a person wants to be free from this existence, there is a requirement. Do we know what that requirement is? There is one major requirement that you will see repeated throughout all of these stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that requirement is that one must smear, I want to use this word, smear, smear the dust of the Vaishnava upon their bodies and take shelter of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the only way. No other way. This was just given to us in the last chapter. We found out the same thing, or in the last study that we did in the 6th canto. We found out that that is the absolute necessity. I remember when I was in Atlanta, when I first joined the Hare Krishna movement, this would have probably been 74. And all of a sudden I was downstairs taking Mahaprasad. I'd never tasted Mahaprasad before. It was the most amazing thing. I was actually quite angry. I was like, why has no one introduced me to this wonderful food stuff? what I've been eating, salt and pepper only. I had no idea there was such wonderful foodstuffs that had been offered to the Lord. It was so luxurious. When all of a sudden this uproarious sound came in the temple room upstairs. Oh, it sounded like the floor was going to fall down. I had no idea what it was. I did not know. And it's dancing and singing and jumping up and down. And it was amazing. And all of a sudden, after the kirtan was over, they all came downstairs and they all sat around me because I was there with Radha Mohan. You might remember Radha Mohan, Ram Raghava. This is way old history, okay? This goes way back. But Radha Mohan was a big devotee and he loved prasadam, boy. I mean, I didn't know that in India they would eat with their hands. I didn't know that. I mean, because in America, we always like that. So Radha Mohan is there getting this sabji and he's just like putting it in. I mean, it's amazing. So I'm doing what he's doing. I'm thinking, this is pretty good. I'm shoveling in by the handful. I'm thinking, Radha Mohan has got this figured out. And then they bring the sandesh and the rasmalai. Oh my God. So I lost it. And all these devotees that were sitting around me, you could smell Vrindavan on their bodies. It smelled like Gopi Chandan. You know the tilak, when we put on tilak, you know how that smell? They have that perfume, in that flower essence. They smell just like the temple. And the dust of their bodies all over me, man. I was in a state of ecstasy. So yes, I will recommend to you personally, you should smear the dust of the Vaishnava all over your body. When we went to India the first time, we got out in front of Krishna Balaram Temple. It was brand new. It had just been built. And in the front of Krishna Balaram Temple was nothing but unlimited open space. You could see forever. No, nothing there, just some cows all around. Now I understand there's skyscrapers everywhere, wherever you go. But at that time, we got out of the bus and we rolled in the dust, in the road, mind you. If you want to roll in the dust in a road in Vrindavan, you got to check out what's in that dust, man. I mean, because that's used dust. I'm not kidding. They're using that dust going back and forth. Rickshaws, animals are passing, whatever. We rolled in it, and then we smeared ourselves with this dust of Vrindavan, which has been touched by the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna and all the great Vaishnavas, 6 Goswamis, Prabhupada, name it. They've all been there. And so therefore, we wanted to smear that dust all over our body. We're more than happy to do that. So that's a requirement. That's a major requirement. So when Hiranyakashipu heard about this, now this is when he said, kill him immediately. Do not hesitate. He killed my brother. He is the actual enemy, my enemy. So he wanted him killed immediately, and he wanted him amputated from the body of the demoniac family. That's actually how he put it. He wanted him to be amputated. And he gave the example that if you have a diseased arm or limb, you have to lob it off to save the body. So this was his example about this pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj. He wanted him to be amputated from the family of these demons. He's his enemy, and because why? Because he cannot be controlled. You see the demoniac mentality. We read from chapter 13, I think it is, in the Bhagavad Gita, divine and demoniac natures. And it talks about, I am the Lord of all I survey, of all that I see. I am perfect, I am powerful, and I am happy. This is the demoniac mentality. So Hiranyakashipu felt this way towards him, and therefore he wanted him to be amputated from the body of these demons. So what did he say? He said, kill him immediately. And they took their tridents screaming, chop him up, chop him up. And they were sticking him with these tridents. You got to imagine this scene. We need to do a movie. I'm telling you, this would be the best movie ever if we could get Steven Spielberg or somebody. If you know somebody, I think Jai Krishna is connected to Hollywood. You should get this movie done. If you did that, it would be the greatest service of all time. Maybe we should talk to your brother or cousin, I think it is, out there. So
My cousin.
yeah, your cousin. We should definitely talk to him about this movie. This is the greatest storyline of all time. So, and it's just ingenious how he thought he had outsmarted God and all of this. So they start chopping up, trying to chop him up, and he sat there silently in a state of meditation, undisturbed, didn't bother him at all, and he was quiet, and their weapons had no effect on him at all. So he said, "Well, if that doesn't work, bring out the elephants. We'll trample him to death." So they brought out elephants. That didn't work. So they got snakes and threw him in the snake pit. Well, that didn't work. So they cast spells upon him. That didn't have any effect. They said, throw him off the mountain. Krishna was there waiting to catch him. Put him in the fire, burn him up. That didn't bother him. Starve him to death. They wanted to starve him to death. That didn't work. So they said, give him poison. Poison him to death. That didn't work. So finally, they resorted to taking large rocks and throwing them at him to crush him to death. Can you imagine this scene, this situation? This is his small son. They're throwing rocks to crush him. They come down to the most barbaric state you could ever imagine to kill this pure devotee of the Lord, and nothing worked. This is when Hiranyakashipu, he had a little epiphany, right? Because he's thinking to himself now. Got to be careful about that. He's thinking to himself, he said, I tried to kill him. I tried all these different ways to kill him, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. He was completely fearless. He acknowledged his fearlessness and his connection to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he said that he appears to be immortal. Prahlad appears to be immortal. So he said, I think I've screwed up, and this may be that I shall die because I've now offended this great soul. But then his mind kicked back in and he went, well, maybe not. We got to give him a round of applause for doing such a great job of this epiphany that he was having. He could see that Prahlad Maharaj had all the power of God on his side. He was protected. And if God is for you, who can be against you? Who could be against you? You name someone. Hiranyakashipu had taken over the whole universe. He couldn't defeat Prahlad, a little 5-year-old boy protected by the Lord. Here's the biggest demon in the universe, threw Indra off his throne, took over everything. He was running the whole show. He was acting in the capacity of Indra, Vayu, Varuna, all of these demigods. He had taken over their roles and responsibility, and they were just simply coming and offering him oblations, worship, and gifts to appease the demon because he was easily angered. You might remember that from the previous chapters. The only ones that didn't come were the three principal demigods, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. They didn't come. But other than that, all the other 33 million plus demigods did come. So Prahlad, he gets frustrated. Hiranyakashipu is frustrated. He didn't know what to do with this child. He has no idea. So he calls up Shandenamarka again and he goes, hey, you got to do something with this guy. So, and they appease him because they're very intelligent. They say, well, don't worry so much about it because he's a young boy. Don't worry, we'll educate him. In due course of time, he'll take up the demoniac role. It'll be fine, and we'll educate him. There's nothing for you to be in anxiety about right now. So he relaxed, and they went to teach him the study of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, what we call karma kanda. Karma kanda means you're marked for death. Yes, you can do puja. You can go do puja, but if your puja is designed for material gain, If you're asking the Lord for something for your sense gratification, that's materialistic and it will end. We don't ask for any of these things. We tolerate all these things, and we accept everything that the Lord sends us as His mercy upon us, and we try to understand what He's trying to teach us. So Prahlad goes back and he's teaching his children all about the futility of material existence. And if you look at what he had to say, this is just one I wanted to point out. Let's see if I can find it quickly for you. I don't know if I'm in that chapter. Yeah, here it is. So it says here, thus the boys surrounded Prahlad Maharaj, giving up their playthings, and sat down to hear him. So I wrote a song. In the song, it says, it's called Wash Over Me. It says, it's time to put away childish things. It's time to find a brand new song to sing. It's time to find or feel the love that you bring wash over me. So the idea is time to put up these playthings, whatever that might be. Could be a better house, more money, bigger car, nicer this, nicer clothes, nicer this, whatever it is. If it's not connected to Krishna, it's definitely Maya. So he says, it says that they sat down to hear Prahlad, and with their hearts and eyes being fixed upon him, they looked at him with great earnestness. So this is the idea. And of course, he was an exalted devotee and he desired their welfare. This is our idea. We want to give the welfare to the world. And we do that by following Prahlad Maharaj. We've only got a few more points to make. And so in chapter 6, we go to chapter 6, Prahlad Maharaj then instructs his schoolmates, right? And if you read from text 2, I think this is the one you mentioned earlier, Ram Raghav, if I'm not mistaken. But in text 1, Prahlad says, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life. That's actually text 1. In other words, from the tender age of childhood to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. So this is actually the recommendation of Prahlad Maharaj, that the human body is rarely achieved. It's temporary like other bodies, but it's meaningful because in the human form, one can perform devotional service. And even a slight amount of that devotional service can give one complete perfection and protection, really. So it affords one a chance in text 2 to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita about that? He says, Yagyartat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana. Tadartam karma kanteya mukta sangha samachara. In other words, work that is being done has to be done for Vishnu. Otherwise, work binds one to the material world. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying this as well. He's saying, don't be bound to the material world of birth and death, but instead engage in devotional service. So that even a slight amount can give perfection. And he goes on to say that sense gratification is available even in the lowest forms of life. Every life, the symptom of life is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So we're seeing that's happening down even on the one cell level. I mean, that's going on. The roaches are doing that. So you have to understand that it's not necessary for us to strive so hard for all this money and all this sense gratification, all this fame and adoration, distinction and profit. It's not necessary for us to do that. Those things come of their own accord by your karma. But simply don't waste your life, because if you live to be 100 years, half is eating and sleeping. You got 10 years in childhood where you don't know anything. All you're doing is getting boyhood or childhood diseases. I don't know if you guys can remember how miserable it was to get all these childhood diseases. Sometimes I still remember the pain and suffering that you go through as a child, because your body it's alien to the world. There's all types of viruses and bacteria and different animals, and you have to be protected, or otherwise you could lose your life very easily at an early age. So 10 years in childhood, another 10 years in boyhood, wasted playing with things. And in old age, another 20 years are wasted because we're invalid and we can't do so much anymore. So while the body is young, use it as a sturdy boat to cross over this ocean of nescience, is what we're talking about. Don't be engaged in insatiable, lusty desires. You can never fulfill these desires. It's not possible. And if you become too attached to household life, then your mantra will be money is sweeter than honey. That'll be the mantra you're chanting. And Prahlad Maharaj said that. So that people who are so attached to household life, they weave a cocoon around themselves. And it's like a cocoon that they weave around themselves. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's a labyrinth. They're caught in a labyrinth of the material world. They have to chop their way out with a sword of knowledge. He's saying that we weave a cocoon, and it's all based around two important senses. Those senses are the tongue, which we just talked about a minute ago. In the Sevan Mukhi Jivado, it means the tongue we do service. Service to the Lord begins with the tongue. But in this case, he's talking about the tongue as a source of pleasure separate from prasadam. In other words, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, verily, you eat only sin if you don't offer your food first for sacrifice. So Krishna talks about that. And we're bound up. And he goes on to say, he asks over and over again, how can we escape from this sound of the children talking, which is very pleasing, from the wife who pleases the husband in solitary places, all of this. And it leads us to an attitude of this is mine and this is for others. And we become overcome by ignorance in that environment. So if we don't acknowledge the Lord and we don't acquire knowledge of the Lord, we're guaranteed to be bound up in illusion. And that illusion manifests itself in one essence. And that essence is, or one target, you might say, and that target is woman. That target is woman, to exploit the woman, to enjoy the woman somehow. That's what the purpose of this life is. And in that, we lose ourselves and we fall down. We become playthings, actually, in the hands of attractive women. And these are demoniac qualities that we must avoid. So Prahlad goes on to say that the Lord can be worshipped under any condition. There's no difficulty. Prabhupada used to say, there's no difficulty. What is the difficulty? So the Lord is present everywhere. He's in all life, from the one cell all the way up to Brahma. He's the super soul. He's in the cores of the hearts of all living entities. And the only person that he is not appears to is the atheist. To the atheist, he appears non-existent, and he does that purposefully. So nothing is impossible for the Lord's servants. They don't need to ask for anything as far as dharma, artha, karma, moksha. They're not interested in karma kanda. They don't want anything in the material world, even from Brahmaloka down to the lowest planet. Like Hiranyakashipu wanted all the powers of Brahma. He wanted to take over Brahma's position. We don't have to have that. We don't want that. So he recommended that we take shelter of Narada Muni, like he did, and learn this transcendental philosophy. So the chapter ends by the young children going, how did you learn this from Narada Muni? And in the next chapter, we'll discuss that more and more. So that's all I got. I don't know if there's any other questions or points, but I wanted to cover that one again because I think that chapter is so important. Those two chapters are so important for us to learn the absolute truth from the mouth of Prahlad Maharaj, one of the Mahajanas, one of the great Mahajanas. So is there any other point or question? Not, we're going to go ahead and finish this class. I want to thank everybody for coming. And I know some people have to check out early. This will be on Facebook. You can always watch it in case you have to go. Don't feel pressured to stay. We have a tendency to go over, but we're here an hour and a half tonight. We finished 2 chapters. I think we did pretty good and some good points put out. And we were able to recap and pull out the essence of those chapters. So I'm going to, if there's no further questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and end this class at this time and invite everybody back next time, same place, same time, same station, to hear how Prahlad Maharaj learned this stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of transcendence. So thank you all for attending.
Right.
Jai. Please
Hare
accept
Bol.
my respects. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Bol.
Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama.
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare. Hare Bo. Thank you for coming. See you next time.